Hi, Bill, Mark, or Dr. Grissom, whoever's watching this. As you can see here, I've completed the social media app. I don't know how well my mic's going to work just because it's kind of busted, but hopefully you could hear me well in it. I'm going to kind of go into the social media app. This is a really cool app, as social media is really big this day and age. Let me pull this up, and plus this. So we edited a lot of different files here in this application. First, I'm going to kind of start with the server. So here's our index.js. We're obviously getting the stuff from the type definitions and the resolvers. We have like a to-do to work on the authorized here. But here, pretty much what we're using is we're giving those type definitions and the resolvers into the Apollo server. We're pushing that request, and that request will give us like some sort of authorization once we implement that. And we'll get like the user ID, their validated token, so on and so forth. I kind of have to hold the camera here too, so if you're shaking, it's because my finger's kind of moving around. So here is the resolver. So this is going to be resolving all of the info that we pretty much are like putting into the different type definitions. Actually, I'll go into type definition first so that we can see all those. So all of these type definitions are the GraphQL type deal that's going to be going into the Apollo server. So we have our example, which is just an ID and text string. Our user, we have our ID, the avatar URI, the name, and their username. Their status. Statuses are the things that are posted. So we have our ID of the status, the user ID of who posted the status itself, the published at time, the parent status ID, just because we do the initial statuses are inputs for their parents, and any replies are also statuses that go to that parent ID. We have users, and then we have is liked, which is a Boolean statement, pretty much just a 1 or a 0. We have our query, which is an example, our feed, and then our responses, and then we have our status input, which is just text, the parent status ID, and then we have our mutations, which is when we're creating new statuses, how we create that using the Apollo server. So pretty much the resolver is just kind of setting us up for all of those different type definitions. So we have our status here, which is getting the user status. We're getting the user, their user ID, and all that kind of information. We're also getting all the information on what posts or what statuses that they've liked. As for query, we're getting the feed. Originally, it'll show that this is an example, which you'll see right on here. This is the example post. So we continue here. We got our responses. We have our parents. We have the statuses. These are all the responses for the different parents. So right here, go back. And then here's where we're doing the mutation. This is where we're writing to the database. So whenever we use a new status, and I'm just going to do ASDF and post it, we're pretty much writing it to the database. And what's cool about the Apollo server is that we're able to have it automatically update, which is why we're re-getting the feed. We're pushing it, and then we write it, and then when we return it, we're re-getting the feed, finding the values. So now it auto updates here. And as you can see, it has a little heart, so I just liked it, unliked it, so on and so forth. If you click on it, I could reply. I'll just do FESA, the reverse of what I did, and there we go. And it's in the back. All the backend is kind of setting that up. As I've just kind of shown you, all this kind of stuff is going to be running through the screens and the mobile. So this is the client.js. This is pretty much just like the setup for the Apollo client and the server. I have it set to my IP. We have our mutations. So like I said, the mutations are what auto updates. So whenever we create a status, you could see that we're creating that status. We give it all the permissions or the parameters that it needs as it gets pushed in. And then afterwards we have this ID. This is what is actually going to auto-updating using Apollo, specifically the Apollo Boost. Same thing for the like status. So if you like it, it's going to refresh the feed really quickly and show that you have now liked it, like you see here, how it is kind of showing that immediately. Even going in here, I just like that, and it'll auto-update that through the Apollo Boost. So these are queries. There's our example that we had from the start. This is getting the request feed, so it's getting the feed from everybody that's posted anything new. And then we have our request responses, where we're getting all the responses. Next, I'm going to go into the screen. So this is our feed screen. Pretty much we created this little function here where we have the feed, where it gets the React navigation. We're putting in the like status and the request feed functions from queries and mutations, and then we're also getting the status separator from the status. So if it's loading, it's obviously going to return an empty screen, but once it's loaded, then it'll return everything in the flat list, which we're pulling again from the database. We also have the like status, which will be an empty array unless you like things, then it will be filled with those statuses that you have liked. New status, this is when we're creating statuses. So we have a parent status. Whenever a new status is created, it will be the parent. Whenever you're replying to that status, it'll be a child of it, but it is still a status. Refresh queries is what we use to update the queries once you post something, and this is all the the React stuff to go into it. I know this is a beautiful view of my face here in the bottom left. And then lastly here, we kind of have our thread. I'll get into the index.js. This is how we are threading everything. So when you reply, how it'll post it to that parent. So we're getting the status ID, and then we're creating using the new status here to create a new status that's underneath the reply button. However, these ones you can't obviously choose to reply to. You can only click the button to reply to the main thread that has been created. And again, we have that like status using the mutation there to like or not like different items that are posted. And as you can see, that the time updated as well, going through that. And then our index.js is pretty much just, we're using the Apollo provider here to run the app, which will make it a lot smoother and it'll run a lot better. We have our Stack Navigator to show the different screens that we have. And yeah, so that's pretty much the social media app. As you can see here, I am John Doe, and yeah, bye-bye.